So Chris here again. In this video I want to talk a little bit more in detail about some of the things in this darkroom and the way they're set up. So like I mentioned in the last video, I do have two of these Bestler 4x5 enlargers. I bought the original blue one over here in about 1990 when I first started doing 4x5 photography. It's set up on a little rolling table down here that has wheels on it. That's actually a leftover from my upstairs when I had it in my bathroom. But this never fit in the closet like the other little medium format enlarger did. So this has the condenser light on it. Most of my printing I actually like with the condenser light. It's the one that has the big magnifying glasses in there, incandescent bulb. It makes a very concentrated beam of light coming through the negative. It's a bit contrastier and a bit crispier of a light than a diffuse light source. A lot of people debate back and forth between the advantages of one or the other. I usually use the condenser head. I like it better. Or very early on, though, when I was doing the printing, I decided I wanted a cold light head, a diffuse light source. So I bought this Zone 6 cold light head. That was back when Zone 6 was still in business. And what I used to do was I would switch it back and forth. If I wanted to do something with the diffuse light, I would switch it back with the condenser light. But that's kind of a nuisance because you have to sort of take the light heads off and do that. A couple of years ago, a fellow locally on Craigslist had this enlarger advertised on it, and he was missing a bunch of stuff on it. It had a color head on it. It was a really fancy Minolta color head that had xenon tubes in it to strobe the light. They're not very good for black and white photography because you can't really do regular dodging and burning. It's just like a flash that goes off for the color printing. So, and it didn't work. He couldn't get it to work. I couldn't get it to work. But I didn't care about that because what I thought about doing was setting it up with my cold light head. And then somebody had broken into his garage, which this thing was in the garage, and stolen the box that had his negative carriers in it and his enlarging lenses. So basically he just sort of had a usable chassis without a light source, lenses, or negative carriers. Well, I had the light source I wanted to put on anyway, and I have my other negative carriers and my lenses from the other Bestler. So when I went to look at it, within just a few minutes of talking to him, when he realized that I had everything that this was missing, he pretty much made up his mind I was leaving his house with this in my truck. So he made me a really good deal on it. It was like $100 for the whole enlarger, and it's sitting on one of these fancy adjustable base things down here. Oops, I'm hitting the door there. It's sitting on one of these fancy adjustable base tables down here as well. So the whole thing's a very nice enlarger. So I didn't really plan on getting a second Bestler, but I ended up with one. I used to have a little medium format enlarger that sat here on the table that I never used. I was just doing medium format in the Bestler. So, couple of things about this room real quick. Like I said, this has 4 windows and 2 doors. What I did on the windows, let me come over here so you can kind of see. This is a big tall window. That's about a 4-foot window there. And what I did is I put extra latches. I had the ones in the middle. I put the ones at the ends so that it sort of snugs the whole thing a little bit tighter. And then I wing nut and I put little studs in here over the glass, and then I just wing nutted down a panel of 1/4-inch plywood. And this is all just painted to match. And then there's actually a little piece of foam that goes around in it. It's that really soft cell foam like you buy at the home supply stores. They sell as weather strip. It's not very good. It's real squishy foam. It's real soft. There's a piece of that around in there. And that works good. The tape that you see on there is white, like white duct tape. And that actually seals it up just a little bit better if I want to develop film during the daytime. In the morning, especially, the sun hits this side of the building over here. So I can get a couple of little light leaks coming in there. If I tape it like that, I don't. The only real light leak I have in here right now is the gap on the bottom of the door when you come in. And what I do is I just roll a towel up and throw it against that. Nowadays, I haven't been doing as many big commercial projects as I was. So usually if I'm developing my own film, I just do it at night. I do it at dusk or so, beginning at dusk. I don't have to worry about sun shining on the window or something. These 2 windows I keep closed all the time. That's why they're taped up. The other 2 windows, this one, and there's one just like it on the other side above the sink, these windows can actually open at night if I'm printing. I can actually open the windows up, leave the screens on. I can get nice air through here. I have the fan, the little blower motor, but it's really nice, especially in the summer if you're down here printing at night, and it's kind of nice outside. You can just open this window up, and the same thing with the one on the other side. You get a nice little cross breeze coming through. There's no light that gets in. There's just trees that way, and that other one's actually underneath a deck out there. So my timer is a digital timer. This is one of these digital Gray Lab timers. This is actually set up in an interesting way. The cold light heads have this strange thing they do where, because it's a kind of fluorescent tube, they have a big power spike when you first turn them on. It takes a big surge of power to light the tube, the light tube, and then once it's lit, the power drops off to keep it lit. It doesn't require as much to keep it lit. So lighting the coal light has a big power surge, it has a big power spike. And they used to warn you not to pull that through a digital timer. This is a nice little Gray Lab digital timer. You can mess up a timer by pulling the big power surge through it. So what they used to sell you was, they call it a contactor, was their name for it. And basically it was just a remote switch. The contactor switched wall power, and you just use your timer then just to turn the contactor on and off. Well, a contactor in the rest of the world is known as a relay. And they use them all the time in like heating, air conditioning systems. When you turn your thermostat on the wall, you're not running your 230 volts of your AC unit through your little wall thermostat or something. The wall thermostat is just tripping a relay that's actually switching to real power. So I went to Grainger Supply, bought a $12 relay, which is way overrated for anything that I'm pulling on it. And it's actually a little box down there on the floor. So my timer, all it does is switch a few milliamps of current to switch the relay that's down there on the floor. The relay then is actually switching wall power on and off to run the enlargers or anything else I might want to run on it. Like if I ever wanted to do a UV box down here or something for contact printing, I could do that and run it off of this digital timer without pulling the whole load through the digital timer. So it's just a remote switch. $12 at Grainger, that was 20 years ago, but it wasn't the $150 that they charge you for the actual, you know, photo darkroom version of it. Let's see, what else can I talk about? Oh, the way that's wired, that whole thing with the timer, is, I don't know if you can see back there, there's two wall sockets back there. The one with this lamp cord plugged in it is timed, the other one's just wall power. So to do this other enlarger, all I have to do is unplug that lamp cord, plug its light into the electrical plug, and I'm ready to go. Let me talk about safe lights for a minute here. These are these old Kodak safe lights. You can see up there, I'm trying to get the light in here. These are these old Kodak safe lights. This safe light is actually not particularly safe for multi-grade paper. You see when it turns on, it's rather green. That's not good on multi-grade paper because of the low contrast end of multi-grade paper is green sensitive. So what I do with these is I turn them toward the wall and I bounce them off the wall. And that seems to work fine. I usually just use one, and because I'm printing over here, down in that area, I'm far enough away from that safe light to where there's no real direct light falling over there anyway. But I don't stand around with my paper sitting out in the safe light. It's either in the paper safe, it's getting exposed, or it's going in the developer to get developed. So up here, back on the topic of safe lights, I have this big old X-ray safe light that actually is safe because it's orange, not green. It's awfully bright, so I kind of worry about it sometimes, so I don't use it a whole lot. But it is a really nice safe light. There's actually another one of those Kodak ones up there. So I actually have two of those. All right, let's talk about my sink situation here a bit and kind of the history of the sink. When I first made this sink, I made this out of just, you know, lumber store kind of lumber. It's 1x4s and sheet plywood on here. When I first made this sink, I painted it with garage floor paint. I thought, well, maybe that'll be strong enough to seal it up and keep it strong. That's what the gray is that's on here, is garage floor paint. So I did that for a while, a couple of months or so. And what happened was when I was developing film, I would hit it, you know, hit like a film developing tank against the sink or something, and I'd knock a little hole in it. And then what would happen is when the water would get through that hole, it would sort of blister the paint. So that didn't work good. So then I tried varnishing it, put like boat varnish on it and everything. That sort of made it yellow looking. And that sort of did the same thing. It really wasn't strong enough. Then I decided, in my great wisdom, that I would fiberglass it. That I would go ahead and do a true fiberglass darkroom sink. Well, that was a disaster. It was a total disaster. I don't get along very well with fiberglass, and when you're doing it at home, it's very hard to mix fiberglass resin and actually get the hardener, the catalyst, mixed in thoroughly. What happens is you tend to be kind of prone to get unmixed areas of your resin, and then they don't harden, they just stay soft. And that's what happened on this. I didn't mix it good enough. So I had this whole sink, fiberglass cloth, all done in resin and everything. It smelled horrible. I mean, it was like walking into a room where they were mixing rocket fuel or something. It was horrible. And it had wet spots in it. It never really dried. And even if I would go back and try to seal those up with, a fresh mix of epoxy and everything, it was just never very good. And it used to leak. Yeah, I'd end up with these little pinholes and it would leak. So a couple of months into that, I started to realize that the only thing that ever actually sealed this sink was this stuff called Lexel, which is a silicone sealer that has adhesive in it. It comes in clear or white. It's a bathroom caulking is what it is. It's the adhesive kind. It's not just silicone on its own. It actually has like glue in it. In fact, it smells like old model airplane cement is what it smells like. And the only thing that ever actually worked on this sink to seal the sink was Lexel. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to seal the stupid sink with Lexel because it's the only thing that works. So what I did was I took the whole top off of this sink and threw it out in the yard and left it sit there for about a month and let it stop smelling. I rebuilt the whole top of the sink out of plywood again. Went ahead and painted it gray with the leftover garage floor paint that didn't work, just to have some color on it. And then I went ahead and used the Lexel sealer to seal the sink. Hang on a second, let me reconfigure the camera here. So what I ended up doing was, this is sheet plastic, and I cut sheet plastic to go in here. There's a bottom piece and the sides and the ends and they're separate. This sink, like I said, it turns the corner in here, so this is a separate piece from that. That's the seam for it. What this actually is, I went to a plastic store and I bought sheet vinyl. This comes on a roll, and this sheet vinyl was not like $10 worth of vinyl. It was wide enough to cover the whole thing by cutting it. So what I did was, when this was still just wood, I put a big bead of the silicone adhesive all the way around it, and I put strips across. I'd already cut the plastic. Then I put the plastic down, squished it into the edge, and then when I had the verticals on and everything, then I took the same sealer and I put a bead around the inside while it was all still wet, and I sort of squished that around with my fingers to go around. And so basically the wet silicone underneath is also sort of bonded to the stuff that was put on top with the plastic in between. What's interesting is, because this room is dark all the time when I'm not in here, this stuff is just like new. I mean, this plastic is flexible. This is the heavier weight of the vinyl that they had, of the sheet vinyl. But this stuff is in really good shape. There is a bit of a stain over here where the film developer goes. This is where my developer tray sits, and some of the silver comes out and it actually stains the sink a little bit on that. But this has worked wonderfully. So good, I would not hesitate to do this again. And to tell you the truth, in my lifetime, I'll probably never have to do it again. This plastic is still perfectly flexible. It's just like new. It has been on here for probably at least 23 years. When I first put it on, I thought, well, even if I have to redo this every year or so, it's only $10 worth of vinyl, I'll just redo it, and like $5 worth of silicone, I'll just redo it. And here we are 23 years later, I've never had to redo it. And not only that, but it's never leaked. I think I had one or two little pinhole leaks down here by the sink, at the sink end, and you just take some more of the sealer, you squish over the top of it, and you're done. The sink is a bar sink, goes into a regular drain set. The faucet's up here on top. You need a faucet that has screw threads on it, like a garage faucet, because that's what you need for putting on the film washers and things on there. So the sink is sheet vinyl glued in with Lexel silicone adhesive, and it's just worked wonderfully all these years. Really worked out well. The sink is set up so that this part of it, of this L shape, is flat, and then this part over here slopes down toward the sink. So when I use this sink, what I do is, when I get done, I sort of throw water in it, clean water, so that if there's any chemicals splashing, which there usually are, I just sort of wash them out. I sort of squeegee it out with my hand, and then what I do is I take one of my old darkroom towels and I dry it. So I don't leave this sink sitting wet when I'm not using it. It's always nice and dry. Like, this is how I walked in on it today, and that way you don't get any stains. I mean, you get the developer stain, but you don't get any mineral stains and dried chemicals and things like that in the sink. So I keep it clean. I rinse it off, wipe it down, keep it real clean. The blower, friend of mine worked, still does, in a heating and air conditioning industry, and that's actually what they call a squirrel cage blower. It's like a fairly decent sized kitchen vent. It looks like a turbine blade. It's in a little box outside, and it pulls through that vent right there. When I had my darkroom in my bathroom for several years, that probably would have been about 4 years I used my bathroom as a darkroom. I actually had that hooked up in the bathroom as well. Again, though, I don't really use it for fumes, because the black and white stuff just doesn't smell like anything. What I do use it for is if I'm out here in the summer and it's not dark out and I can't open my little windows on the side, what I'll do is turn that on and it'll pull a little air through. kind of, you know, under the door and things, so it kind of cools it off a bit. My drying racks up here, like I said in the first video, this is actually weed eater line. This is you know, trimmer line. I tied it onto these little eye bolts over here at the end, these little eye hooks. When they were screwed out, I sort of tied it on tight, and I screwed those in to tighten it up, to put tension on it. That's been tensioned for the same thing, like 23, 24 years. I would save room if I put these on this way and I hung film sideways, but I kind of like to be able to move the clips around, so I put them on this way, which actually kind of wastes space a little bit, because now my film or prints or something drying are hanging in line this way. So that actually is not space conserving to do that, but I'd rather be able to move them around. When I develop film, I usually hang the film over on this side and let it hang down over here. So you may have noticed in that first video when I was looking around, my chemical jugs are a little weird. Years ago I bought a bunch of these. That's a stop bath on it. Most of these are getting old now. These aren't cheap. I never could really understand paying, you know, $10, $12, $14 for an empty jug. I think that's about what they go for, especially for the gallon ones. When these get old, they tend to get cracks along the seams, and most of mine now have cracks. I have a couple of small ones that don't, but most of my gallon ones have little holes in them, and my chemicals will oxidize faster than they should. So to overcome that, yeah, Diet Snapple. I just started using a bunch of leftover Snapple containers, and you know, this is Deckdoll. This has been in here for a while, and you notice it's not brown. That's because it's nice and sealed up. So I just write on it with a Sharpie, Deckdoll Maine, and if I'm saving something like Fixer that I've used once, I want to use it again, same thing, I just put it in a bunch of these and I just label it. And they seal up really well. The chemicals actually seem to be lasting a lot better in Snapple containers than they were in my leaky old you know, data-tainer things. So, so I've just been saving regular household type bottles to do the chemicals with. And like I said before, this room, and people are saying, but it's clear. This room is completely dark when I'm not in here working. So there's no windows that are open or anything. So there's no light issues with this getting ruined with light hitting it when I'm not here. So that's a good look around my little dark room. If you have any questions or comments or anything, leave them in the comments below and I'll get to them. Be sure to subscribe and like and all that stuff. And I will see you in the next video.